right. Good evening, everybody. Since, according to the Western calendar, it's Nittelnacht, even though I observed the second one, it's the Dominican Satmar. And then if I wind up learning that night, I'll just say, well, I observed the first one. But in any event, I figured it would be a good time to talk about the last movie I saw in the movie theater recently, Godzilla Minus One, which has gotten a lot of attention. And I saw it 2 weeks ago. I brought my son to go see it in the movie theater. And my son said it's the best movie of 2023. The only thing is we haven't really seen so many movies this year. New movies, if we go to the movie theater, it's usually just to see old movies. But this was really one of the best new movies I've seen in a very long time. And I didn't even realize that it was something you could see in the movie theater until my friend Mr. Lobo mentioned it on his Twitch stream. Maybe it was a week before we went to see it. And it was really, really worth seeing, especially on the big screen. And just so my take on this film, first of all, is that the story is something that you don't need to necessarily see on the big screen. The story you can appreciate on a small screen or a big screen. But the Godzilla parts, I think, much better seen on the big screen. I remember when Godzilla vs. Kong came out, the American Godzilla vs. Kong, and instead of spending the money to go to a movie theater, we just spent the money for HBO Max to watch it on HBO Max, and it was cheaper to do that than one ticket to the movie, for that month. And since then, we've kind of kept up with the HBO Max also, and now it's just Max. One of the things we wanted to see was actually a TV movie that we were extras in, and we were trying to kind of make our way through. Finally found the scene we were in, and we were all sitting in cars, and you couldn't see us, but we got paid. And that was an HBO show that we had been in. But in any event, as fun as Godzilla vs. Kong was, maybe it would have been better to see on the big screen. I don't know. I saw Godzilla King of the Monsters in a drive-in theater, and I could barely see anything, but my understanding is even if you would see it in a movie theater, you wouldn't see anything either. I did see Kong Skull Island, I think in the same theater where I saw this Godzilla Minus One. But the truth is, just as Mr. Lobo said, we're comparing apples and oranges. Because the American Monsterverse, Monarch Monsterverse, is not really Godzilla, right? It's the American Godzilla. And I don't think I've actually watched the 2014 American Godzilla at all. I tried watching through it. I don't really remember it very well. I don't think I made it all the way through. This film, Godzilla Minus One, and for the record, I did not see Shin Godzilla. This film, Godzilla Minus One, I was amazed when I heard James Rolfe say he thinks it's the best Godzilla movie ever made. And I was kind of shocked by that, but then actually seeing it, certainly as a film, as a movie, this is the best Godzilla movie ever made. Which is hard for me to say because I'm always someone who prefers the classics. I certainly eschew and despise the 1976 King Kong. I don't mind the 2005 King Kong, although I know some people hate it. This is totally different than any of these films because it's a new story. In a way, it's almost, the way I'm looking at it, it's similar to Star Wars Rogue One. And I think it's actually better than Rogue One. I only watched Rogue One once that I can remember. We saw that in the theater, and I actually made a video about that. the storyline is somewhat similar to Rogue One, but as I said, and in a way that it's a prequel, that whereas Rogue One was obsessed with answering the questions that everyone had, and in a certain way, the Solo movie also was similar like that, just, things that had been mentioned offhand in Star Wars movies and having to make something out of it. This film was not obsessed with answering questions, with filling in any gaps in the original Godzilla. This is a movie that works on its own, that it's unique. I don't want to spoil the movie for anyone who hasn't seen it yet. I highly recommend. I think there's another 2 weeks left that is left in the theaters. If you have an opportunity to see this film, please make an effort to go see this in the movie theater. Don't just wait until it's streaming, because the experience of seeing it on the big screen is worth the ticket price. I know it's expensive to go out to the movies, especially to see new movies. It's much different when I go to the Rosendale Theater and see, something, from the 30s or 40s on the big screen. But this is also one of the fascinating things is that it takes place in the 40s, so it's actually, in that way, like we said, it's a prequel to the whole Godzilla franchise, which is something that I really appreciate because I'm interested in history. This is a really realistic look at what life was like then. The aftermath of World War II, obviously Japan brought it on themselves, but the people were victims of their own empire. And it really makes a hero out of, I don't remember the names of all the characters, but it really represents that idea that, this was a person who was probably looking at the war much how probably all of us look at World War I, like, what are we doing? Why are we doing this? And that's why he chickened out. And then he finally had his, what we felt as the Allies going into World War II, knowing that this was a good war, this was the just war, this was the necessary war, this was the war. Of course, nobody wants to fight any war, but this was something that was necessary to fight against pure evil of the Axis powers. And so in that same vein, fighting against Godzilla was kind of that sense, because of understanding that, Japan was not in the right in how they sent people and what they did and everything, and the kamikazes and everything like that. But this, to have the people go out and fight Godzilla, which again, I don't want to spoil anything, was really powerful. And again, it really reminded me in a way of Rogue One, but did that much better than Rogue One did. So, and it's just a beautiful, amazing story that just happens to have Godzilla, and not in the same way, again, in the forgettable sense of the 2014 Godzilla that I remember Glenn Beck making a big deal about it, and he said he's not a fan of Godzilla, but his son is, and he really enjoyed that film, the 2014 Godzilla, which is hard to believe that was 9 years ago. This is something totally different, that especially if you're like me, you're interested in history, you're interested in, vintage type of things, to see this story being told in such a powerful way, and it's a new, original story in a franchise that's been around for such a long time. Next year will be 80 years. Am I doing my math right? 70 years? Yeah, 70 years of Godzilla. Not 80 years. Sorry about that. So next year will be 70 years of Godzilla. And, we're ready for it, a franchise was not made out of the Beast from 20,000 Fathoms. A franchise was not made from a lot of these other places, a lot of these other great films. There's no Gorgo sequel. There's no Robot Monster franchise. One of the things that Mr. Lobo pointed out that everyone likes to point out is how this is considered a low-budget film. $14 million is considered a low-budget film because a lot of films are $140 million today. And this was much better. Again, I don't watch the Marvel movies. If I want to watch superheroes, they're going to be the serials from the 40s, where Batman is driving a regular car or something, But this, where Superman, turns into a cartoon when he flies away, Kirk Allen as Superman, That's what I want to watch if I'm watching a superhero movie. And so I don't know about those Marvel movies, but I heard they're not that great. But this is really just a brilliant film. It's worth seeing. And one of the things they're pointing out is even TV shows today could be $25 million, and they're garbage. And yet this film, beautifully filmed, incredible special effects, even though it's CGI, and again, we're fans of the old ways, we're fans of the practical effects of the guy in the suit or the stop motion, which Toho really didn't get into the stop motion except for like half a second in King Kong versus Godzilla. Even though they wanted to, they couldn't afford to do that stuff. And here, this is really just incredibly awesome, brilliant film. And I just want to mention another aspect when it comes to this particular film. As far as what it means, low budget. So, mentioned to Mr. Lobo, this is a low-budget film for $14 million. Robot Monster was made for $6,000. And he's like, and how much of that didn't make it to the screen? But the truth is, we love that movie, Robot Monster. We love, whenever we get to see Gregory Moffat, He Should Be Well, and all the other people who are associated with that. That's just one of our highlights. And to see, I will say, and we mentioned on the podcast, if you can see Bob Fermanack, who's become a friend of our family now, and He Should Be Well and blessed, Bob Fermanack's restoration of Robot Monster in 3D, particularly if you can see it in a black and white 3D on a large screen, but even to watch it on the Blu-ray or the DVD, even with the green, red and blue, cyan and red, whatever, 3D glasses, it's also something worth seeing because it's really, really beautiful to see how that film was supposed to see. Plus, you get to see Slick Slavin do all of his imitations, which was apparently actually shown originally with Robot Monster. This wasn't supposed to be a Robot Monster review, but do check that out. That is a lot of fun, but also worth seeing because it's so crisp and beautiful. And again, that's from 70 years ago, from a year before the original Godzilla came out. Same year as the Beast from 20,000 Fathoms, and they stuck the Beast from 20,000 Fathoms on the poster for Robot Monster. So is this the Robot Monster of our generation? No, it isn't. This is maybe the Night of the Living Dead of our generation. If you want to, make a comparison of something that is low budget, if you want to call it that. I mean, to me, it's ludicrous to consider $14 million to be low budget. But that is a brilliant, and not only that, but it's a feel good. It's not depressing like the end of the Night of the Living Dead. It feels good. It's great. It's worth watching. So please like, share, and subscribe, comment. God bless. We'll see you later. All right, how do I turn this off?